MV Superior Producer. Once called the MV Andromeda, the MV Superior Producer has evolved. It was built in 1957 as a cargo ship in Kootstertiel, the Netherlands. The MV Superior Producer was given its name when it was sold to Rotterdam, Netherlands-based Rederij L. Remius NV on February 22, 1962. It had a routine existence, taking up and dumping off goods along the Dutch coastline under the ownership of many people. With the primary purpose of transporting freight between Willemstad, Curaçao, and Pampatar, Venezuela, a city on Isla Margarita, the MV Superior Producer was later sold and reflagged to its new home port in Panama. On September 30, 1977, the Producer arrived at Curaçao Harbor, St. Annabay, early in the morning and anchored past the Queen Emma floating bridge. It was packed full of Christmas cargo for two local Curaçao business owners who hoped to make money during the holiday season. On an unlucky Thursday afternoon at 1:30, a crew of 9 men cast off the lines. The ship began to heel dangerously right away. The captain ordered a section of the cargo to be thrown overboard. This was ineffective though. More complications resulted after the crew failed to seal the ship's portholes, which let water enter. Even the Curaçao Port Authority's tugboat's attempts to tow the boat back to its right side were unsuccessful. The harbor master decided to give up on rescue operations after multiple fruitless bids out of concern for the crew's safety and the harbor itself. The MV Superior Producer was towed by tugs about 1,640 feet to the west, past the harbor entrance. It soon vanished behind the waves and into the depths around 500 feet from shore at 4:30 p.m., 3 hours after cast-off. The captain and crew successfully left the ship and were picked up by the harbor police. The news spread like wildfire across Curaçao. Scuba divers, free divers, and snorkelers from all over the island flocked to the beach to loot the wreck of its cargo. It was described as total anarchy, but nothing remained after a few short days. Even the abandoned portholes had disappeared. The vessel is now peacefully resting on her keel, bow pointing west of the Curaçao megapier, under 100 feet of water. Many divers still explore the abandoned Producer to witness a forgotten piece of history. The SS Sultana. The sidewheel steamer SS Sultana exploded on the Mississippi River north of Memphis, Tennessee on April 27, 1865, causing one of the greatest maritime disasters in American history. Just a few weeks before, the American Civil War had ended and Union prisoners of war were eager to get back to the North after suffering inhumane treatment while in Confederate military prisons. The federal government generously compensated steamship operators for each soldier they transported. This process resulted in shocking levels of corruption and a disregard for fundamental safety issues. In the Sultana's case, boat owners' greed led to poor boiler maintenance and transporting as many as 2,300 passengers, 6 times the vessel's maximum capacity. Hundreds of people died in the first explosion when the boiler burst, and more were trapped as the overcrowded decks fell. Despite the fact that over 1,800 people died, the Lincoln assassination dominated news coverage and basically overshadowed the catastrophe. Have you ever heard about this? Let us know in the comments below and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. 3. Deepwater Horizon. On April 20th, 2010, 11 people were killed as the worst offshore oil leak in American history was started by an explosion and fire on board the Deepwater Horizon oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico, 50 miles off the coast of Louisiana. The rig had just finished digging an exploration well for a major British oil company. An estimated 4.9 million barrels, or roughly 206 million gallons of crude oil had entered the Gulf by the time the well was sealed almost 3 months later. A surge of natural gas from the well caused a series of explosions and a huge fire. On board the 126-person Deepwater Horizon, which is about 400 feet long, 11 employees died and 17 others received life-threatening injuries. The Deepwater Horizon was built for $350 million in 2001 and burned for more than a day before sinking on April 22nd in almost 5,000 feet of water. Before leaving the rig, crew members tried helplessly to turn on a blowout preventer, a safety feature meant to stop the flow of oil from the well in emergencies. Over 3 months, efforts were made to plug the hemorrhaging well, which was pouring thousands of barrels of oil into the Gulf every day. Finally, on July 15, 2010, British Petroleum stated that the well had been temporarily sealed, and on September 19, 2010, federal authorities declared the well dead after cement was poured to permanently cover it. But by then, the leak had reached Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama's coasts, severely harming the region's economy, especially the fishing and tourist sectors, as well as the wildlife. According to scientists, determining the whole scope of the environmental harm will take decades. A National Investigation Commission study on the disaster, which was published in January 2011, concluded that it was a foreseeable and avoidable accident caused by human error, engineering faults, and management shortcomings, as well as inadequate government regulation. BP pleaded guilty to 14 criminal charges brought against the company by the US Justice Department in November 2012 and paid $4.5 billion in fines. In addition, the Justice Department accused 2 BP officials who oversaw well testing of manslaughter. Another business executive fabricated information regarding the scope of the leak. BP agreed to pay $18.7 billion in charges in July 2015. The MV Wilhelm Gooslov. The MV Wilhelm Gooslov was the centerpiece of the Nazi Strength Through Joy program, which provided entertainment to German employees and was a crucial component of Third Reich propaganda. When World War II broke out in 1939, the ocean liner, which had previously taken tourists on vacations in the North Atlantic and Mediterranean, was turned into a hospital ship. In the last chapters of war, it was used as a floating barracks and was sent out to evacuate German soldiers and civilians from East Prussia before Soviet armies arrived. The Wilhelm Gooslov had lost its non-combatant markings of white paint and red crosses, and with soldiers on board and anti-aircraft weapons on deck, it was now a military target according to laws of war. Thousands of refugees climbed aboard the Gooslov as they went in search of safety. The ship, which could only hold 1,900 passengers, sailed away from port on 30th January 1945 with an estimated 10,000 people. That evening, shortly after 9 p.m., a Soviet submarine launched 3 torpedoes into the Gooslov's port side. The crew members, most equipped to handle an evacuation, were either trapped below deck or killed in the strike, rendering several of the ship's lifeboats useless. Just over an hour later, the Gooslov disappeared beneath the chilly Baltic waters. Only 1,200 passengers were saved, despite the fact the rescue operation started shortly after the ship's first SOS call. The sinking was history's deadliest shipwreck, with over 9,000 deaths. The Exxon Valdez. The Exxon Valdez, an oil ship run by the Exxon Shipping Company, discharged 11 million gallons of crude oil into Alaska's Prince William Sound on March 24, 1989, causing the Exxon Valdez oil spill, a man-made tragedy. Up until the Deepwater Horizon leak in 2010, it was the worst oil spill in American history. The Exxon Valdez spill killed thousands of ocean critters while covering 807 miles of coastline. There are still isolated patches of crude oil in some places even 30 years later. Exxon Valdez was an oil tanker and ore carrier for more than 20 years after the disaster, until it was put back into operation with a new name. The Exxon Valdez, carrying 53 million gallons of crude oil, left the port of Valdez, Alaska on March 23, 1989, heading to Long Beach, California. The ship ran into Bligh Reef though, 4 minutes after midnight on March 24, 1989. A total of 11 million gallons of crude oil spilled into the ocean after the ship's hull was torn open. It was the biggest single oil leak in American waters at the time. When early attempts to confine the oil failed, the slick continued to grow over the next few months, eventually spanning 1,300 kilometers of shoreline. Investigators eventually realized the Exxon Valdez's captain, Joseph Hazelwood, had been intoxicated at the time and had let an unlicensed third mate drive the enormous ship. Hazelwood was cleared of all criminal charges in March 1990. He received a $50,000 fine, 1,000 hours of community service, and a conviction for 1 count of misdemeanor negligence. More than 11,000 Alaskans and government responders cleaned up the spill in the months after the Exxon Valdez oil disaster. Exxon spent about $2 billion on cleaning, $1.8 billion on habit restoration, and another $1 billion on human injuries. Workers at the cleanup site scooped oil from the sea surface, sprayed oil-dispersing chemicals in the air and on the ground, scrubbed beaches with hot water, and cleaned any animals caught in the oil. To evaluate the impact of cleanup procedures, some of which were still experimental at the time, environmental officials purposely left certain portions of the shoreline untreated. Later, they discovered that washing with hot, high-pressure water hoses removed oil effectively, but caused more ecological harm by destroying the plants and animals. Prior to the spill, Prince William Sound was a natural wilderness. All of it was drastically changed by the Exxon spill, which had a severe impact on wildlife. 250 million seabirds, 3,000 otters, 300 seals, 250 bald eagles, and 22 killer whales were part of the reported losses. In the early 1990s, the salmon and herring fisheries in Prince William Sound may have collapsed thanks to the oil leak. As a result of bankrupt fishermen, the economies of tiny coastal communities like Valdez and Cordova suffered in the years that followed. According to some assessments, the Exxon Valdez oil spill may have caused a total economic loss of nearly $2.8 billion. Based on a 2001 report, 91 beach sites in Prince William Sound were assessed, and more than half still had oil pollution over a decade later. According to estimates, the spill killed 40% of all sea otters in the Sound. After the spill, the sea otter population didn't recover until 2014, 25 years later. Herring stocks, which were once a valuable source of revenue for fishermen in Prince William Sound, have never fully bounced back. The Oil Pollution Act of 1990 was approved by the US Congress in the aftermath of the disaster, and President George H.W. Bush signed it into law the same year. The act enhanced fines for businesses that cause oil leaks and mandated the installation of double hulls on all oil tankers operating in American waters. The Exxon Valdez was a single-hull tanker. A double-hull design would have saved the catastrophe by decreasing the likelihood a collision would have caused oil to flow. The old Valdez relocated to Asian seas in 2002 when the European Union outlawed single-hull tankers. In 2008, Exxon sold the infamous tanker to a shipping business in Hong Kong. The business renamed the former oil tanker the Dongfeng Ocean after converting it to an ore hauler. The star-crossed ship was badly damaged once again in the Yellow Sea back in 2010 when it crashed with another bulk carrier. After the collision, the ship underwent yet another renaming, becoming the Oriental Nicety. In 2012, the Nicety was disassembled and sold to an Indian business for scrap pieces. MV Goya. The Soviet sinking of the German transport ship MV Goya was the second greatest maritime catastrophe in history. The sinking was very similar to the wreckages of the Wilhelm Gooslov and Steuben. The German Kriegsmarine tried to evacuate civilians and injured troops using whatever ships they could find. One such refugee ship was the MV Goya. She was a member of a convoy leaving the Hel Peninsula and traveling across the Baltic Sea to Germany on April 16, 1945. Goya was overrun by fleeing civilians and injured troops. Records indicate there were 6,100 passengers, but it's believed there were many more filling every available space. A Soviet L-3 submarine was keeping watch over the convoy as it left Danziger Bay. At 11:52 p.m., Captain Konovalov gave an order to open fire on the Goya. Between 6,000 and 7,000 immigrants died from hypothermia or drowning when their ship sank into the chilly Baltic Sea. Thousands more were washed ashore on surrounding coasts during the next few weeks. This is the second deadliest accident in maritime history, with close to 7,000 fatalities. The highest Soviet military honor was given to Captain Vladimir Konstantinovich Konovalov, the submarine captain who caused the disaster. He was given the title of Soviet Union Hero. Over the course of Operation Hannibal's 15-week duration, 158 more commercial ships were sunk. This kind of incident is still mostly unheard of worldwide, as it's buried in history books. Thanks for watching. Which one of these disasters surprised you the most? Tell us in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.